Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's council meeting, part 2. We return to item 7, the annual climate action report and action plan update, which the Deputy Provost will take.
Thank you, Provost. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, we now move to item 7, the annual climate action report and action plan update. And I would ask Barbara Renton to introduce this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost, and good afternoon, councillors. The Council has already supported the Scottish Government's declaration of a climate emergency in June 2019 and has signed the Edinburgh Declaration in 2021, acknowledging the biodiversity emergency. However, in this report before you this afternoon, the Council is asked to consider making a new declaration to clearly reiterate and strengthen its commitments and continue to stress both the climate and biodiversity emergencies. This report asks the Council to consider the first annual climate change report, which provides an update on the Council's progress in delivering its strategy and action plan, which was approved last December. It also details actions for the coming year. I'm pleased to note that the Perth and Kinross Climate Commission has now been established. And I'm delighted to be the Council's officer representative on this, along with Councillors Richard Waters and Liz Barrett. The Commission are a group of highly committed, motivated and knowledgeable individuals who will both challenge and support us on our climate approach. The annual report in Appendix A and the detailed action plan in Appendix B highlight the good progress made in the first year of delivery, helping to lay a foundation for the work in future years. But there are, however, 3 key challenges to the delivery of these future actions. The first is in relation to resources and capacity, and this is specifically about ensuring there are sufficient resources to increase pace and scale of action, and that's underlined as a recommendation in the Council's report, as the Council's own resources will not be enough. The recommendation asks the Council to agree for the Council leader to raise this with COSLA and both national governments and any other relevant bodies as appropriate. The second is embedding climate change into decision making across all council decisions and operations. And this has been underpinned by the creation of the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee. And the final one is influencing others to take action. Changing behaviours will be key to address climate change, as the Council cannot do it alone. That's why engagement activities are an integral part of the strategy and action plan. As an example of recent engagement activities, the Perth and Kinross Youth Climate Conference was held at Dewar Centre in Perth last Friday, with pupils coming from across Perth and Kinross. Emily and Nicole, 2 of the young members of the Perth and Kinross Climate Change Commission, have kindly sent us this recorded message.
I'm Emily McGregor. I'm part of the Perth and Kinross Climate Commission. I'm from Perth Academy.
I'm Nicole Rattray and I'm also a member of the Perth and Kinross Climate Commission, and I'm from Bulgaria.
Today is Friday the 4th of November and over 80 pupils from all over Perth and Kinross schools have gathered here at Dewars. It's a chance for everyone to hear about different opportunities and facts about climate change from local businesses and individuals, and also share their own views on those issues.
Today we exchange our experiences in relation to climate change and climate action and identified actions that we can take individually or collectively in our schools and communities now and in the future. As young people, it's very important that we are given the opportunity to share our views in relation to climate change, since we'll be the ones to endure its effects. Taking action to combat climate change while we consider those who are most vulnerable to it and its effects, such as young people and vulnerable communities, is essential in ensuring a fair and just transition.
Thank you very much to both Emily and Nicole. A very stark and strong message from our young people. Both Davindy Grant and Serge Morone are here online to answer any questions, and we are happy to take those. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I see the first question, and the only question so far is Councillor Colin Stewart. Colin.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. My question is in relation to the biodiversity aspect of the paper. Back in, sorry, allow me to bring it up. Back in 2020, the Council was continuing a programme which I think had started prior to then, so 2019 or 2018 possibly, of surveying our local nature, surveying for local nature conservation sites. There are two types of sites, biodiversity sites and geodiversity sites. And I wondered what progress had been made towards completing the surveys and then turning any resultant outputs into planning policies for inclusion in LDP2 to actually enhance biodiversity.
Thank you for that. Davindy, that sounds like a question for you. Thank you.
Yes, it is. So my colleagues have been working on this. I last spoke to them. I believe they were halfway through the surveying, and with the hope of sort of the surveys need to be done during the spring and summer period. They made some progress this year, and it's hoping.
So, sorry, can you pause, Davindy, whilst I think we try and do something with the sound? It's not as it should be. Thanks.
Is that any better? Can you hear me now?
No. Is there anything we can do from the corner of the room?
Is that any better?
Davindy, I don't know if you can turn your microphone up on your device at all, because we seem to have different volumes coming through the screen here.
I think that's full volume.
Yes, Davindy, if you could come downstairs, I think that would be easier.
Okay, whilst Davindy relocates, we'll go to the next question, which I think is Councillor McKeown.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. My question was related to Appendix B in the page where it talks about developing a tree strategy. And I just wanted to know if there was any detail around whether we would plant trees along sort of A-class roadways. And it's very obvious when you drive around Perth and Kinross, especially rurally, that some roads have some very ancient oak trees along the roads, indicating that those roads have been there a hell of a long time. But yet there's great aspects of our roads where there's huge gaps where trees have probably come down and passed storms but never seem to ever be replaced. And I wonder if that's just an opportunity in an area of land where trees could be planted to actually improve and increase our tree planting strategy.
Thanks. Barbara will take that question.
I'll not be able to answer it in full, Councillor McEwen, but we will certainly incorporate that if at all possible. There are certainly issues nowadays in terms of sight lines and just making sure that we don't do anything or plant anything that would compromise those sight lines in anything, but we'll feed that back into the strategy.
Thank you. Are you ready, Davindy, from where you are to? Okay, if you'd like to go on with your answer to the first question, thank you.
So to answer the councillor's question,
Can you hear me? Excellent. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. So to answer the councillor's question, there was issues because of the requirements during sort of COVID-19. So the surveys during 2019 and summers of 2020 and 2021 were slightly delayed, and we weren't able to complete as many surveys as planned. They went ahead with a sort of comprehensive survey program this year, and we're about halfway through the surveys with the plan to complete them next year, and in time to be incorporated into LDP 3. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. And we now move to Councillor Kugali. You say you've got 3 questions, and unless they are very closely related to each other, can I ask you to take the first, and we'll come back to you in due course. Thanks.
Is that working? Yeah. No, they're not particularly closely related, so I have to come back round to them. The first question is probably actually better directed at either the leader of the council or the convener of the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee. I am really encouraged by seeing the 7.2% reduction in the recycling contamination, but it's also been flagged with me in the past few days that there are approximately 200 households in Perth and Kinross whose recycling is getting put into landfill because their homes are deemed too unsafe to go and pick up recycling from, so it's all chucked into one hole essentially. Just like to ask whether there's a commitment to ending that, because I've had some emails that would demonstrate some distress from the people that they are essentially contributing to the problem, or they feel they are, because the council's not fulfilling its role properly.
Provost, happy to answer that partly. Obviously, that's an operational matter, as you will know, Councillor Kalgoorlie. So I think you should direct the question probably to Barbara Renton.
Barbara, thanks.
That is genuinely the first time I've ever heard of that, Councillor Kugali. I will look into that and we will come back to you. If you could provide me with more detail, that would be very helpful.
Thank you very much. And now Councillor Robertson.
Aye, that's it. Thank you, Deputy Provost. Can I ask about procurement? Do we have a policy, or are we going to adopt a policy that we're careful where we procure goods and services from, and that we expect all the sources of our procured services and goods to come from companies who have an environmentally friendly policy? And there's no point in us doing a lot of work towards this if our sources are not doing as they should be.
Thank you. And Lisa has suggested she will take that. Thank you.
Obviously, we have to work in terms of procurement within the terms of the legislation, but we are actually actively looking at that as a cross-service officer group, focusing particularly around the climate change challenge and our procurement and commissioning activity. And that's a piece of ongoing work that's going on at the moment, which is being co-led by Davindi and myself.
It would be helpful. Thanks for that. It would actually be helpful if we could find out at a later date how successful you have been with that, because if that is sort of carried forward, not just here but nationally and internationally, it can fairly make a difference to to working practices throughout the world, I'd have said.
That's actually it'll formulate a key part of our procurement strategy, which is due for renewal and is being worked on over the next year. So it will be coming back as a policy statement, and obviously we'll be doing briefings, etc. prior to that, and keep you posted on how we're getting on.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Welch.
Thank you, Vice Convener. It's great to see this paper being brought forward, and it's good that we're getting off the starting blocks. As the paper sort of talks about, the Scottish Government is significantly supporting decarbonisation and energy efficiency programmes. We've got to, as a council, very much embrace the local heat and energy efficiency strategy. We've got to apply for the funds that the Scottish Government is making available, which will make a significant contribution to resources that we have ourselves. Do we feel that council staff have got the resources in order to access those funds and also to deliver the needs that are flagged in the paper?
Davindi, can you take that one, please? Thank you.
Yes. So this year, the council has brought in a funding officer with the ambition of sort of potentially making this into a team to sort of be helping the teams across the council, so the energy team, the transport team, etc., better apply or better sort of get early sight of these funds, track these funds, and then sort of hopefully deliver sort of successful grant applications. And I think part of this as well is getting to the stage where we have a number of shovel-ready projects.
Yep, there we go. Hooray. And now we have a question from Councillor Forbes, who I believe is a long way north of here. Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. Just Blairgowrie, not that far north. I think you're getting mixed up with where I'll be next week. But anyway, another matter for another day. I see we're being asked to declare our own climate emergency, which goes against a decision we took some time ago. No issue with doing that. Happy to support that. Just wonder about what this will actually do in terms of making a difference to our ability or to make the lives of people in Perth and Kinross better. So 5.1 goes into the rationale, but what I'm not seeing is any specifics about how this will help us. And I wonder if maybe Davindi or someone else can give me just a couple of those, please.
Thanks for that. And Barbara Renton will, Davindi is going to answer this one.
Thank you. So in terms of the specifics of how it will make a difference, in some ways it will only make a relatively small difference because the council is already sort of prioritizing climate change in terms of its actions, in terms of the sort of new corporate plan that's being proposed. Climate change is sort of being put forward as one of the top priorities. And in some ways, this is giving climate change the recognition that it's due. What we do hope as well, though, is by sort of recognizing that we are in a climate and biodiversity emergency, is also that we can start using that language within the council. And part of it is with the deadlines that you have of 2030, 2045, climate change can sometimes be seen quite as a sort of, it's an important problem, but as a sort of longer term problem. And it's hoping that by sort of using the emergency and changing that language, that we'll really start to be treating it as the current emergency that it is, which will then have sort of direct impacts on our residents in terms of the adaptation and resilience benefits that they'll receive.
That's
did
fine,
that
thank
answer
you.
your question?
Yes, it did, Davindi. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The first question we have so far indicated is Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. The question is mainly for Davindi here. Within section 6.7, that you state the public sector is only directly responsible for less than 3% of emissions. However, the council itself has decision-making ability to affect a lot more. I was at a climate emergency training last week provided by the council, which stated it could be up to 40%. Would you have an idea of what kind of area or what kind of amount of influence we actually have in respect to that? I understand there's already policies going forward with that, but would you have an idea about that. Thank you very much.
Can I just clarify? Are you asking, is the 40% sort of accurate, or is it what degree over that 40%?
Yeah, fair point. Yeah, it was part of an overall presentation, and it was an average percentage, I think, across councils in the United Kingdom, and it said there was you could influence up to 40 to 50% was the phrase. That was so. I was just wondering if you have an idea yourself of what we are doing here in Perth and Kinross.
Yeah, no, I mean, so in Perth and Kinross, it's, if you look at just the carbon dioxide emissions, we have influence of sort of upwards of 70%. When you consider sort of methane, which brings in a lot of the agriculture, it's sort of closer to that sort of 40, 50%. In terms of how we can influence, if you consider sort of where our emissions come from, transport is 26% of our overall emissions, and the council can influence these emissions in different ways. So with our sort of large rural population, EV or other sort of non-fossil fuel sort of transport modes will play a big mode in that transition. So it's, while we can't sort of directly force people to make the switch, if we can provide good EV infrastructure, also what sort of transport policies we put in, our public transport, our sort of, especially in how it serves rural areas, things around car clubs, parking, etc. That can, the combination of those actions, which are all within the council's sort of sphere of influence, we can make quite significant impacts on land use, which is about another quarter of the emissions. Through our sort of planning policy, especially our forest and woodland strategy, we can have quite significant impacts. But it's, with that, it's, we aren't directly implementing anything, but it's just having the policies for it to be in place. I can go through it all, but does that sort of give you an idea?
No, thank you. You sound like you have a very good handle on it there as well. Do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now move back to Councillor Kigali for your second question, and then go to Councillor Stewart for his second question. Thank you.
One of my questions has already been asked now, so I only have one more. On page 136, on the second line of that table, there's a commitment there to raise awareness of alternative approaches to attending meetings across council employees. That seems to suggest to me that the PKC are going to be trying to encourage employees not to come into Perth with the aim of reducing vehicles in the town centre. I was wondering what work has been done to ensure that that doesn't even further detrimentally impact the businesses that are already struggling in Perth, because there's been lots of discussion in here and outside of here about that being a challenge, and I just hope we're not accidentally compounding that.
Barbara Renton will take this one. Thank you.
There will always be that conflict between all of the priorities that the council has, you know, sort of to deliver climate change, then we need to reduce carbon emissions. Transport, as Davindi has said, is one of those ones. What we are looking at is a different approach to how our staff work, and how they access and how they deliver those services will be a big part of that. It's very early to be able to say how that will work and how that will impact on businesses. But I think it's very, very clear, and we have to be very, very focused on the fact that the council can only, you know, sort of in the number of people who come into Perth or any of our towns and cities will be a marginal difference, and there's an awful lot more different economic development that we need to do rather than simply businesses being dependent on council staff.
Thank you. And I see Karen Donaldson has put an A in the chat. Karen, do you want to come in further? Thank you.
The only contribution I would like to make is that council staff have been working on a hybrid basis, but many more staff continue to be working in their normal workplace across Perth and Kinross. So hybrid working means that staff may not be working in the office all of the time in Perth, but not all our offices are in Perth. And over a working week, then we do see most staff spending at least part of their working period travelling to their normal workplace. So that continues to bring employees into the towns and the city as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart, and then Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. It was really to follow up Is on Ms Grant's answer about when the biodiversity surveys would be completed and when that could be turned into supplementary guidance policies for the local development plan. I did have an answer 2 years ago that once the surveys were completed and they were in process at that time, then policies could be brought forward for inclusion in LDP2. And the answer that I got at the time included that the reporter, in assessing LDP2 at the examination stage, considered that it was appropriate to identify sites in supplementary guidance. So that reporter's examination stage took place in 2018, 2019. The action associated with this aspect of biodiversity is down in the action plan for 2027. That's an 8-9 year gap on something that we're now declaring to be an emergency. And I wondered whether there was any opportunity to accelerate before LDP3, or at least in the when we bring in LDP3 in 2024, the biodiversity sites, so that we can actually be taking action rather than allowing it to drift for another 5 years.
That's a detailed question, Councillor Stewart, that I would need to discuss with my planning colleagues and then those that are involved in LDP3, but we'll come back to you on that unless Davindi has any more information. No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Braun, I understand you have 2 questions. I'm happy for you to go with both since we have no more questions asked. Thank you.
They are actually linked, Deputy Provost, so this makes it easier. We touched on the subject of electric vehicles. There is going to be some changes coming, I think, because battery technology is rapidly being worked on, and I understand that in the next 2 years we'll have solid-state batteries in cars, which will charge quicker, will run longer, and their recycle charging is up to 100,000 times, which will increase perhaps the people who want to buy electric cars, and also will create a second-hand market because the cars have batteries which will last. So my question is, are we increasing the number of charging points we have, and are we increasing them with the right kilowatt charging rate? Because obviously another factor is you don't want to have to wait for half an hour for a car to charge. The higher kilowatt chargers will charge in 18, 20 minutes, 15 minutes sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. So as sort of you've possibly heard, or as one of the actions in the action plan, there's both the development of the mobility strategy as well as the development of the EV sort of charging strategy. So that's an ongoing piece of work. We've been working with partners across Tayside to both quantify the sort of future projections over the next sort of 2, 5, 10 years, how many sort of chargers we'll need, the different capacities, and making sure that they're the appropriate speed.
Question, okay. And the second point was obviously one of the factors that will encourage people to buy electric cars is the confidence that they can stop somewhere and charge. And it's recently been said in the paper that some charging points are completely out of action, up to 40% of them are out of action. I'm not sure if that's just Perth and Kinross or Scotland generally, but I mean, what is our policy to get these things repaired as quickly as possible?
Barbara Renton will take the first one. Okay, Leader of the Council first.
Thanks, Councillor Drysdale, for pointing out that was on. But thanks, Councillor Braun, for thank everybody. Thanks for letting me answer the question, Deputy Provost. No, as my partner has an electric vehicle now, I get questioned on this regularly. So I was speaking to Mike Lees, who is our officer, and if you want to speak about charging moving forward and points, definitely get in touch with Mike Lees. He's very, will inform you of everything. My understanding is that the infrastructure we've got within Perth and Kinross is getting rather old, and so it break down more frequently. And we have got the contract the contract at the moment is with the firm to replace and repair the chargers, but the ones all over Scotland are the same age, and it's the same company that's trying to repair them all. So it's becoming more difficult. So you're correct, and I feel we are not getting them repaired quickly enough. This will go ongoing until this. I think we're in the middle. Councillor Renton, Barbara Renton, maybe managed to. I've taken over her role, and she's got my role for the rest of this question. There's a procurement process going on, and I'm sure Perth and Kinross will be very well sought after for the private sector to come in and provide new charging points. And obviously charging points will be at 7, 42 and moving up to 150 to 200 as cars. We've got to be able to provide for people who've got the existing models that the batteries can only take 7 kilowatts. But moving forward, we have to be able to, as battery technology improves. So it is very well covered by the council. Team are very well on top of this. And if we can get through this next few months before the procurement process unwinds. But if you want any more information, I think if you speak to Mike Lees, he'll be able to give it all.
Thank you for that. I'll just check with Councillor Kigali. Your third question was answered, you said. Yep, thank you. In that case, I see no further questions, and I would ask Councillor Waters to move this report.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. First of all, just a thank you to Serge Davindi and the climate change team for all the work they've put into this report. And the strategy and action plan, but also to wider across the council. There's a lot of officers from all over the council who put a lot of work into creating this strategy and looking at how we can start on the process to get to net zero. I'd like to thank Emily and Nicole, our Perth and Kinross Climate Change Young Commissioners, for their message and their engagement. The Perth and Kinross Youth Climate Conference held at Dewars last Friday was a great success, with pupils from all over Perth and Kinross making excellent contributions, and have also pledged to take further actions to address this climate emergency. It is important that we as a council also continue to take action and support others to help deliver our common goals. This report is the first annual climate change report, which provides an update on the Council's progress in delivering its strategy and action plan, as well as detailing actions for next year. We are asked to approve the report and action plan. We are also asked to declare a climate and biodiversity emergency. The Council was one of the first local authorities in Scotland to support the Scottish Government's declaration of the climate emergency in June 2019. And signing the Edinburgh Declaration in 2021, acknowledging the biodiversity emergency. By clearly reiterating our commitments, we will recognise the significance of both the climate and biodiversity as real and current emergencies. The Council is already committing resources, and we know we need to increase the pace and scale of action. However, given the scale of financial challenges facing the Council, this will be extremely challenging. If you agree, Councillor Grant Lane, Leader of the Council, will raise the resources and delivery challenges associated with addressing the climate and biodiversity emergency with COSLA, the Scottish and UK governments, and other relevant bodies as appropriate. Finally, I'd like to underline some key achievements from last year. The establishment of the Perth and Kinross Climate Change Commission, with over 25% membership by young people. The Youth Climate Conference, successful engagement with large employers. Launch of a dedicated website. The commencement of passive house school builds. The establishment of the Council's Climate Change and Sustainability Committee are demonstrating that there is no other choice than working together in the spirit of the Perth and Kinross offer. If we want to progress, moreover, and thinking of Nicole and Emily's message, we cannot progress if we are not helping the one who we are and will suffer the most from climate change effect. It has to be a just and fair transition. I'm very pleased to move the paper for your approval. Thank you.
Thank you. And I now call on Councillor Liz Barrett to second the paper.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. As COP27 are meeting in Egypt, I'm very pleased to second these recommendations to Council. With our incredibly mild autumn and the terrible flooding that caused misery and distress in Perth City South and other areas across Perth and Kinross in August and September, it's increasingly clear to everyone that we must recognise we're facing an urgent crisis both for the climate and for biodiversity. As Emily, Nicole and Councillor Waters have said, this is about fairness and justice and equality, as the most severe impacts are being felt by the poorest and most disadvantaged here in Perth and Kinross and across the world. I welcome the progress we've made on our top actions in the action plan that we adopted last year. The commitment and knowledge coming from our members of the Climate Commission is proving invaluable, and we're very grateful for that. It was inspiring to be at the Perth and Kinross Youth Climate Conference last week when schools committed to take action, including joining in the Schools Energy Challenge, and I think we can expect some friendly rivalry to develop in there. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all councillors and officers who've done the carbon literacy training. I know I certainly found that very helpful in understanding the issues and the urgency and what we can do. And I would encourage everyone to take up the offer of this if you can, please. The action plans for 2023-24 recognise we have so much still to do with our very limited resources, but it's vital that we keep progressing on the priorities and pressing for support from COSLA, the Scottish and UK governments and other bodies, both in terms of funding and for direction and action on the areas that we as a council can't control. As well as agreeing to the recommendations in this report and update, I hope we'll all do all we can as individuals and in our communities to use our influence to address this real and pressing climate and biodiversity emergency in Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one comment so far. Bailey.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I admire the ambition of this plan and I really welcome our reaffirmation that this is an emergency situation. However, I still worry that we're still failing to walk the walk on climate change. If we, for example, look at the bigger picture of how we're allocating funds, the numbers are pretty stark. £32.5 million is the extra funding given to CTLR in September 2022, which has already destroyed a mass of our countryside. £2.3 million is the extra funding needed to deliver on the Council's existing pledges on climate change, including vital work to prevent flooding, which we'll only consider for allocation in February due to this Council's current financial position. So far this autumn, we've allocated over 14 times more funding to a road than this climate change action plan is being told it has to wait on. Under the SNP, this council has two committees fighting it out over who wears the trendy climate change hat, but no budget with which to even start the priority projects in its own action plan. I therefore call on the SNP administration to put their money where their mouth is on climate change and start to walk the walk. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey. I see no further comment. I'll give a quick minute. No further comment. Can we agree the paper? Thank you. I'll now hand back to the Provost. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Item 8 is the audited 2021-22 annual accounts and the annual audit report to the members of Perth and Kinross Council and the Controller of Audit for the year ended 31st March 2022. And Stuart Mackenzie, the Head of Finance, will introduce the report.
Thank you, Provost, and good afternoon, councillors. Can I just check whether everyone can hear me? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This report presents the Council's audited accounts for 2021-22 and the accompanying annual report with the Council's external auditors, KPMG. Following scrutiny and approval by the Audit and Risk Committee, the unaudited accounts were submitted to the Council's external auditors on the 28th of June, made available for public inspection in July, and the audit undertaken throughout the summer. The draft audited accounts and annual audit report for 2021-22 were approved by the Audit and Risk Committee on the 27th of September and are submitted to Council today for information and noting. The external auditors have issued an unqualified audit opinion, both for Council's accounts and the accounts of the Council's charitable trusts. The annual audit report includes both commentary on the Council's financial performance in 2021-22 and on wider issues of financial management, financial sustainability, governance and transparency, and value for money. And my colleague, Mrs. Simpson, has just reminded me that I'm not coming across particularly well. Can everyone still hear me? Just check.
Yeah, we can hear you, Stuart. It's a wee bit quiet, but we can hear you.
I'll speak. Apologies, councillors. I'll speak closer to the microphone. Adjustments to the Council's current revenue and capital budgets arising from the accounts were reported to and approved by the Finance and Resources Committee on the 7th of September, and the updated position on the Council's General Fund reserves included within the medium-term financial plan approved by Council on the 28th of September. The financial performance of the Council in 2021-22 is summarised within the management commentary on pages 156 to 169 of the agenda pack. Overall, the Council's reserves increased by approximately £13.7 million in 2021-22, reflecting service variances, an additional grant and council tax income. Included within this figure is £8.8 million of grant funding received and accounted for in the last financial year, which is meeting expenditure in the current year. This was reported to the Finance and Resources Committee in September and approved as an adjustment to the 2022-23 management budget. At the 31st of March of this year, the Council's General Fund uncommitted reserves totaled £16.578 million, or 3.8% of the net 22-23 revenue budget. Our housing revenue account reserves totaled £3.3 million. Adjustments to reserves are monitored and approved throughout the year by the Finance and Resources Committee. Gross expenditure on capital projects and programmes last year totaled approximately £90.8 million, comprising £15.3 million on the Housing Investment Programme and £75.5 million on the General Fund. This included £13.7 million of expenditure on school upgrade and replacement projects, £29.8 million on roads and infrastructure projects, £8.7 million on affordable housing, and £10.5 million on cultural and community projects, including Perth City Hall and Letham Community Wellbeing Hub. The External Auditor's Annual Report for 2021-22 highlights adjustments to the accounts identified during the audit and their assessment and recommendations arising from their wider audit work. In terms of the financial statements, one adjustment to the disclosure note, rather than the statements themselves, was identified and corrected, and a professional judgmental difference between the Council's and KPMG's valuers noted. The Council's external auditors attended the Audit and Risk Committee in September in person to present their annual report and take questions from committee members in advance for formal approval of the accounts. This concluded their responsibilities in terms of reporting to Council members. Our auditors are therefore not in attendance at this meeting of the Council. Their contact details are provided within the annual report should elected members wish to raise any matters relating to the audit or their report with KPMG directly. I would conclude by again taking the opportunity to thank colleagues from across the Council, partner organisations and our external auditors for their support in the completion of the audit of the Council's accounts. Happy to take questions, Boris.
Thank you, Mr. Mackenzie. Members, are there any questions on the report? No. Okay. If there are no questions, I'll call on the Leader of the Council to move the report.
Thank you, Provost. Councillors, the Head of Finance has already provided you with a detailed introduction on the contents of the report in his opening remarks. The annual accounts and the external audit report have already been subject to detailed scrutiny by the Audit and Risk Committee, and therefore I will keep my remarks brief. In terms of good governance, it is right and proper that all elected members have sight of the annual accounts, and I'd like to draw elected members to the management commentary contained within the first few pages of the account. This section provides a helpful overview of what we've achieved last financial year, as well as the challenges we collectively face over the short and medium term. KPMG's audit report also provides welcome external reassurance to all elected members that we are a well-run council focused on delivering better outcomes for our citizens. Provost, with that, I'm pleased to remove this report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. Councillor Donaldson to second the report.
Provost, I wish to second the report. The report is to note the annual accounts and the report of the auditors, KPMG. Although there has been a time gap between these documents being approved by the Audit and Risk Committee, and I note that Councillor Illingworth, convener of that committee, is going to comment in a minute, I think it's essential that the annual accounts do go before full council, before all councillors, even if it is only for noting, and it's something we should do every year. Councillor Lang has said that the management commentary is helpful for councillors. That is indeed the case. With some of you, it may be that your eyes glaze over when confronted with the massive figures and some of the finer detail. Personally, I actually think it would be helpful if and it's something I've said to Stuart McKenzie before, if the professional body SITFA could provide more in the way of financial training for councillors, and at the very least provide an A to Z booklet of terms, as they used to do for Scottish local government, and as they still do south of the border. I think the other thing I'd also point out is you shouldn't overlook the notes to the accounts. They sometimes can provide quite a lot of actually interesting information. So for instance, let's say in culture, Perth and Kinross, and various other areas of council activities, and also help you to drill down on a number of areas. Next year, audit moves to Audit Scotland. In its last report, KPMG, and it's a very positive report, refers to the Council's significant capital plan, which will continue to be under pressure in light of inflation and increasing construction costs. I'd also just say it's not just the capital plan, but all of the Council's finances that are under immense pressure. And I think most of us here are more than aware of that by now. Finally, those who will bear the brunt of much of that pressure are our finance team. It's not just Stuart and Scott. It's not just Alston O'Brien, John Jennings at Treasury, or Donald Coyne. It's all of that team. During the pandemic, they went above and beyond. Now they face different pressures that they've never probably faced in their working lives. Like, I think all of you, I just want to thank them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Councillor Illingworth, Chair of Audit.
Thank you, Provost. In 2017, the Highland Perthshire village of Dull twinned with Boring and Bland. As a new convener of Audit and Risk, I was hoping that this year's audit accounts would also be Dull, Boring and Bland with no surprises. When the Audit and Risk Committee scrutinised the accounts, it was surprising to see one substantial recommendation from the external auditors, KPMG, This, as far as I'm aware, has never happened before in Perth and Kinross Council's history. However, on scrutinising, the committee found that the recommendation which related to the componentisation of infrastructure assets affects every council in Scotland. We found that it did not impact on the running of the council, and it did not reflect in any way negatively on our finance team. Provost, we can be very proud of our finance team. They are highly qualified and highly motivated and dedicated to providing a high quality financial service to us. And without that financial service, without financial stability, nothing in this council is possible. We can't pay teachers, we can't pay binmen, we can't do all the services that our constituents depend on. So the other thing, if I may, I'd like to thank KPMG for their work over the last 6 years as external auditors. As Councillor Donaldson said, Audit Scotland will be taking over the external audit from next year, and I look forward to their input. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Councillors Kugali, Brand and McCall for their involvement in the Audit and Risk Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Illingworth. Councillor Drysdale, as the other part of the curate's egg, as the former audit chair.
Thank you, Provost, and to borrow a phrase from Councillor Donaldson, I'll be brief. But I really will be brief. As convener of the Audit Committee throughout the previous term of the Council, I would just like to add my thanks to the finance team led by Stuart Mackenzie and all the others who have already been named, and also to KPMG as our external auditors, because without their independent external input into this, we wouldn't have such a robust framework that we are able to operate under. And as has been said already, without a strong finance team, everything else that this council does becomes much more difficult. So I will be brief, and I'll just end there by saying thank you to everybody who has been involved throughout my term as convener of Audit Committee under the previous council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale, and Councillor Liz Barrett.
Thank you, Provost. In their audit report, KPMG have highlighted in several places the quality of the accounts, the responsiveness of the finance team to the audit queries, and their diligence and their professionalism. I'd like to add the appreciation of the Lib Dem team to Stuart, Scott and their teams, and to all the departments involved in the work on the accounts and getting them audited and signed off, and also for all they're doing to support us going forward as we face the difficult decisions ahead of us. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor John Duff.
Thanks, Provost. I would just like also to express my thanks to the Head of Finance and his team for the extensive work involved with maintaining and publishing our accounts, and for the exemplary manner in which they are invariably presented. We've had many comments today across all of the papers before us about how much more complicated, challenging and constantly changing our finances are these days. And as I've said before, I think it's of great comfort to us as elected members that we have such a good financial team in place. And I would ask Mr Mackenzie to pass on our thanks to everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Leader of the Council, do you wish to sum up?
I'd just like to reiterate what everyone said here, to pass on our thanks to all the finance team for doing their job in such a fantastic and reliable manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Leader. I think we all echo those comments. Our thanks to the Chair of the Audit Committee and his Audit Committee, and to the Finance team as well. Members are happy to note the annual accounts. Thank you. Members, item 9 is the 2023 committee timetable, and Scott Hendry, the Acting Democratic Services Manager, is going to summarise the proposed timetable.
Thank you, Provost. In line with usual practice, we have the proposed timetable of committee meetings for next year before us today for approval. A draft timetable was prepared by officers earlier in the year, which, where possible, reflected the wish of elected members to hold a majority of meetings on Mondays and Wednesdays, taking into account all other resource considerations. The proposed timetable was to be brought to the last council meeting at the end of September, but as you will recall, this was then deferred to allow further consultation with members. A meeting took place in mid-October involving both staff and representatives from all political groups. General consensus was reached at that meeting on working towards holding all committee and subcommittee meetings on Mondays and Wednesdays. The version that you have before you today has been further revised by officers since that meeting to take account of feedback from the Provost and both the Leader and the Deputy Leader of the Council. One small change since the publication of the Council papers last week, in relation to 8th of May next year and the proposed meeting of the Attendance Subcommittee. As this will now be a public holiday for the coronation of His Majesty the King, this meeting will be moved to the closest possible slot that is available. I'm happy to take any questions, Provost. However, you may also wish to field some of these yourselves, given the role that you had in the timetable.
Thank you very much, Mr Hendry. Bailey Ahern.
Thank you very much. I just want to pick up on the summer and the October recesses and the fact that you've got 3 planning and placemaking committees over those 2 recesses. That's going to affect elected members and officers in terms of trying to fit in holidays, but with the potential of maybe not having a core committee. But I just wonder, especially the work that leads up to those for planning officers, and I just wonder the rationale for having 3 over those 2 recesses.
Thanks, Bailey Ahern. I'm happy to pick that up. There has always been quasi-judicial meetings in the recess periods. There was a request for more frequent planning and placemaking meetings so that they are every 4 weeks. If you go through the timetable, they are basically exactly every 4 weeks, which does, I'm afraid, unfortunately mean that they do need to meet during recess. What we did try to seek was to move them to the beginning and the end of the recess periods wherever possible to allow as much of a clear recess period. So there is about 3.5 weeks in the summer clear recess period, and in the October and Easter recess periods there is a 9-10 day clear period as well, where members have no meetings at all of any sort. So it is unfortunate, and if there was any way of possible of achieving it without going into recess, we would have done that, but just to ensure that the committee can meet that regular, that was necessary. The Deputy Leader wishes to speak as well.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I would just like to add to that nevertheless, and the point is well made by Bailey Ahern about the encroachment into recess, but I can just point to the fact that we still have retained 7 full weeks in which no committees take place at all across the council, and I think that's not too bad considering the overarching desire to have meetings on Mondays and Wednesdays, which has been an ambition of this council for 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with it. There's 7 weeks, but you've got, I don't know how long it takes officers to prepare for a planning committee, but that knocks down the 3 weeks for officers, because you're going to have a week before to try and plan a planning committee, I would imagine.
I share that view and was of that view, but after speaking to officers, it was the desire of officers that it be every 4 weeks, both from the committee side and from planning and development management, and they are quite used to being on that cycle, and it also allows us to meet our statutory requirements in terms of determination, etc. So that was the rationale behind that. Councillor Bob Braun next.
Thank you, Provost. It's obvious that being on planning is very sad. We don't get much of a recess, but my query is to do with LRB. Traditionally, LRB was always on a Tuesday. And I'm looking at the timetable very quickly here, but I guess I'm just very small, but we're looking at LRBs on a Monday afternoon, which obviously is our group meeting. We always used to have them on Tuesday. It's only a 3-member body. It's not like a full committee. And I'm just wondering why we can't put those back onto Tuesday mornings again as they were, which always seemed to fit everybody.
I'm happy to answer it and then allow the Leader of the Council to come in as well. So the Council resolved 5 years ago to hold committees on Mondays and Wednesdays to allow members who are working to commit certain days and then be off for certain days. If you are on, for example, licensing committee used to meet on a Thursday. If you're on licensing and you worked 3 days a week, you would have to use over half of your annual leave entitlement to attend those committees if you were not able to rearrange it. So we have sought to try and make it as work friendly as possible and to allow everyone to participate in every committee, so that it's not just certain members who are able to take part. So I appreciate that LRB was previously on a Wednesday, on a Tuesday rather, but as part of this process, we have sought to move all committees off of those off of Tuesdays, Thursdays and Fridays, and we've also sought, at the request of the cross-party group that met, to move meetings that involve councillors and chaired by councillors off of those days as well, but are not necessarily committees of the council, wherever possible, to again get to that point where councillors can maximise their involvement and not feel that they are excluded from any committee of the council. But if the Leader of the Council wishes to add anything to that.
Thanks, Provost. And the questions I see are coming up from members who will no doubt remember that in 2017 the motion was brought and accepted unanimously that officers would work with elected members to make meetings appear on Mondays and Wednesdays as possible to broaden the range of people who could come to this council. Unfortunately, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, no move was made to fulfil that desire of council as expressed, and I don't blame officers for that. But that was passed in 2017. This year, I think we need to start setting out to see if this is possible to work this timetable for the intake to come in 2027, who will take our places or some of our places, will know that they have 3 days a week they can continue to work. Because we're talking about poverty and that before. We could not have somebody coming in here and this be their sole job with a scattergun approach that committees were before, where you could be 4 days one week and then 2 days the next, or not a day the next week. It's to try and even it up so people can come in with certainty that their committee commitments will only be 2 days a week, Monday and Wednesday, so they can work out with their employers before they put their name forward to stand. And I stand by the idea that was brought forward by the previous administration and the council that we should do this in a motion in 2017. And I think that the great work that officers and the people who've the elected members, and I've not had a lot of input into it because I feel that I'm here coming every day as I should do as leader, and I remunerated for that. I should not interfere with the timings of other people who are not so well remunerated and are not expected to be in every day. I should not be interfering with when they turn up. I think this is a really good starting point. I would like to see how it work, and hopefully we can keep the meetings to 2 days a week.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Forbes next, please.
Thanks, Provost. I'm just wondering what the rationale was behind reducing the number of service committees.
So there is a reduction in terms of business due to the remits of the committees being redivided. So not all service committees have gone down, but some of the service committees are expected or are currently experiencing less business. Obviously, the previous Environment and Infrastructure Committee has had its remit changed, and there is expected to be less business through some of the other committees as well, as a result of it being spread out across a number of committees. Certain aspects were moved around out of, for example, SP&R into other committees to even out workload. So we are confident, and officers, the Chief Executive is confident that those number of service committees should achieve. It should be all that is required for the business.
Thanks, Provost. Can I just come back on that, if you don't mind? I do remember
Certainly.
at previous meeting sort of slightly teasing my good friend Councillor Parrott about not much on EIED, but he did point out to me that EI also now had ED. So I would have thought that one would have compensated the other, and therefore we could still look forward to lots of substantial business to talk about at these committees. But you tell me that's not the case.
I'm expecting there to be a lot of substantive business 4 times a year instead of 5 times a year, and that the committee will fulfil its time slot rather than maybe having to be cancelled. I think there was one that was cancelled at the start of this year, perhaps when you were the convener of that committee.
That's absolutely correct. So I've just had an email to tell me the minutes are ready for the next EIED meeting. I'll go and have a quick look at them and I'll look forward to that. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Provost. I completely agree with the ambition to reduce the impact on people who have jobs. What I'd also like to request and see if it's possible is 2 things. Firstly, to have some sort of group, some sort of working group, look at making meetings go more quickly. Either that could be, for example, we could be looking at how we empower conveners to say, come on, let's move this on and train them. It could be looking at the length of time of deputations and number of deputations, but any sort of thing that we can do to make meetings more efficient, I think would benefit everybody. The second thing I'd like to suggest, if it's possible, is that we have a similar sort of group looking at officers' papers. I'd like to see brevity. I'd like to see a clear executive summary at the head of every paper we read, and if necessary, more information down in the appendices. I think these would be easier to produce, they would be easier to read and easier to understand. So if those 2 suggestions can be taken on board, I think everybody would be very grateful.
Thank you very much, Councillor Illingworth. Mr Henry has just been advising me that they are currently working on a revised template, and I am aware that the Chief Executive is keen to look at the layout for papers, and there has already been, as you might have noticed, some of the changes to the way papers are formatted at the moment, and I think there would be all-member consultation around how it would assist members to get the best out of the papers. So I'm happy to take that point on board. Similarly, I think previously conveners have been offered assistance with chairing and training with chairing. We can make sure that is re-offered. I think from my point of view, the length of council meetings has significantly reduced time-wise, and I'm aiming to keep that down by keeping business moving wherever possible, and happy to take that point on board as well. So, and members are indicating at me to hurry it along so that we can all get out, and I'm going to miss my 3 o'clock deadline here. Councillor Drysdale, you also wish to come in on this.
Thank you, Provost. Just to answer Councillor Illingworth's first question, we have already had discussions within the administration group and provided encouragement and initial training to conveners with a view to making the progress in their meetings succinct so that we do not encounter overrun that impacts on afternoon meetings, for example. So that is already initiated, and any further training that is available will be, I'm sure, gladly welcomed, and I'm sure that Councillor Illingworth will do likewise with his audit committee.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Forbes, you have a second question.
Thanks, Provost. Was any consideration given to holding some meetings in the evening, the way Dundee Council and others do?
That
well,
was
Councillor Forbes. I think
back to
opening a nice can of worms there. I'll let the leader of the council come in first.
So back in 2017, we go back to this meeting, which I'm sure is fresh in all the memory of the councillors who were there. It was suggested that we do exactly that, but the administration at the time would not support looking at the idea, and but they did accept in the amendment. Well, not an amendment, but they accepted another motion in to make it as often as possible. We'd have meetings on Mondays and Wednesdays. That was in 2017. So that was explored by council in 2017, but was rejected by the previous administration. I'm sure you remember that.
I have to confess, Councillor Lang, I don't, but I'll take your word to be gospel, as I'm sure it always
I'll send
is.
you a link. I'll send you the
fine.
link.
I trust you on that one. Thank you.
Okay, just to be slightly less apolitical, it was the views were taken across the board, across the whole council, by the then head of Democratic Services, Gillian Taylor, through a formal poll of what members' preferences were. There was a slight preference by members at that point for daytime meetings. Those of us who had been campaigning internally with our fellow members, and I think Councillor Shires will remember this because I think she was supportive of it as well as I was at the time, to try and get evening meetings. Were not successful at that point. However, Councillor Bailey and I at the time achieved a compromise, which was that committee meetings would be moved on to Mondays and Wednesdays, so that those with jobs could commit to their employers to attend certain days of the week. Councillor Bob Braun.
Yep, thanks, Provost. Just coming back with a second question on the LRB again. Sorry, I know these are on Mondays. I've noticed, I've counted just quickly 4, 5 on a Monday at 1 o'clock when there's no meeting in the morning. Is there any reason why we can't hold these in the morning? And people are fresher.
So there was. These meetings have been all over the place, I can assure you, Councillor Braun. There is a lot of internal meetings going in the morning, so a lot of councillors are unavailable in the morning. We did try to find a sweet spot. It is very difficult to find sweet spot on a Monday. That was the sweet spot we managed to find, basically, where we're hoping that with your expeditious chairing of the LRB that it will be finished in time for your group meeting, or if at all, it might run slightly into it, but not too much. So I do that, and obviously there's a pre-meeting we had to factor in, and we wanted you to have lunch beforehand, so we didn't want to start it quite to a sort of awkward time.
There was a point we usually have a pre-meeting before LRB though that will eradicate lunch.
Yes, so we're hoping you're going to have a short pre-meeting and a short lunch. Okay, and I have further questions. Councillor Shires.
Thank you, Provost. 2017 is all flooding back to me now. Can I ask if there's a plan for a review of this changes so it can be tweaked if necessary as we go through the year? Perhaps at 6-month intervals. It doesn't need to be anything terribly formal, I wouldn't have thought.
Yes, I think that's very much what we had envisaged, and I had spoken to the Deputy Leader of the Council about this, that we would look at this in 6 months' time and hope to bring forward next year's timetable earlier as a result. Deputy Leader is indicating he wishes to also come in.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, as with other administrative matters such as the scheme of administration, we fully intend that this is a living document. We hope that there won't be much need for structural change, but we shall see in the light of experience over the first few months of 2023 how this is working, and we can always reflect and amend as appropriate.
Yeah, I think a early summer review is what we'll commit to at this point, rather than a living document in terms of the committee times. So you can all put them in your diary for the next year and be safe in the knowledge that that's going ahead. Okay, comment from Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Provost. I wanted to agree with one point of what Councillor Illingworth said and disagree with another. I think that his comment about the way that reports are written is helpful. I think that acknowledging the pressures that officers are under, report writing is an art form, but we could potentially go further in teasing out the salient points that in terms of both recommendations and background when those reports are getting written. One thing that he said that I don't think is a helpful suggestion is about looking at the way that committee meetings are formatted so that we have a reduction in deputations. Deputations are one of the few opportunities for residents and communities to come along and formally put on record their views about matters of concern to them, and I wouldn't like to see that inhibited. I do think that meetings could be often sped up by having concise questioning and answering, but that's a task for elected members as well as for people that come along and answer questions for us. One more thing. I would like to thank yourself, Provost, for the amount of time that you spent on the timetable and in implementing that instruction to officers back in, I think it was in Article 741 of the minute of the full council in December 2017. I could be mistaken. And also the time and effort that the Deputy Leader, Councillor Drysdale, put into it as well. So thank you to both you wonderful timetable elves.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart, and thanks to our colleagues, Mr Henry and Kirsten Molly in Committee Services, who did far more work, I would suggest. Councillor Rebeck, you're next.
Thank you very much again, Provost. I really approve of this timetable. I do remember 2017 actually, and thinking that's great, we're going to have all our committees on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then wondered for 5 years why that wasn't happening. So it is really appreciated. I think there's two benefits going forward that will have. I think it will encourage a greater cohort of councillors, hopefully in the years to come, where we're able to advise people who may be considering whether to stand or not, if we can be more definitive as to what their responsibilities will be, and if we're able to say it will be Mondays and Wednesdays, I think that will be really helpful. I think it will also help as convener of learning and families, where we have people who are not council employees or elected members coming and who make often very useful comment and contributions to that committee. I think it will help them as well, the knowledge that it will be a Monday and it will be a Wednesday. So I just want to echo thanks to yourself, Provost, and Councillor Drysdale and colleagues right across the chamber actually that have agreed what I think is a very good timetable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rebeck. Councillor John Duff.
Thanks, Provost. I was going to flag up some concerns I had, hopefully unfounded, when we put this into practice, about the reduction in service committees from 6 to 4 in some areas, and getting through the volume of work that we have in the past, and also about having 2 meetings in one day and the inability for the morning one to run over. However, I am comforted by the fact that we will have a review of this within 6 months, and we will be able to see, hopefully, as I say, that these concerns are unfounded. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Drysdale, you wish to come in?
Thank you, Provost, and I just wanted first of all to thank Mr Henry and Kirsten Malloy as well for their efforts, and in particular to thank yourself, and I'm very much looking forward to getting you off of speed dial on my phone now that this is concluded for the time being. Just on another point, and it's been made during the earlier debate, but I just wanted to emphasise it just now. The real issue here is that we want our council, Perth and Kinross Council, to reflect the population of Perth and Kinross. If we look around this chamber at the moment, there are very many, shall I say, as tactfully as I can, slightly older gentlemen who many of whom may be retired, and I include myself in that. And we really want going forward to be able to ensure that we have a balanced council that fully reflects the population of Perth and Kinross. And in order to do that, we have to give a degree of certainty to the weekly commitment in this place that is expected of those who may put themselves forward for election. And what we have here is 118, I think it is, meetings scheduled throughout 2023 at present on Mondays and Wednesdays. And that is quite a feat. And so, as I say, I'd like to thank the people responsible for that, and hope that we can work together to across the chamber to make this work, and in so doing, be able, as the council leader has said earlier, to when we come to select candidates, all our parties and independents for the 2027 elections, that we can say with hand on heart what the level of commitment in this place is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Leader. Councillor McEwen and then Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Provost. I'd like to thank the effort that's gone into this from the councillors and the staff and democratic services to putting this together. You know, as convener of housing and social wellbeing, we also have the fire and police service who attend our meetings, and actually when those meetings are, needs to fit in with their statistical reports and approval of them officially, and that adds a complexity to filling in this sort of diary for a calendar for us that is a wee bit more complex than just putting names in boxes. And there's a lot more to consider in the background of it. So thank you very much for the deliberations to get that correct for this coming year.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen, Councillor Harvey and then Councillor Lane.
Okay, thank you, Provost. I'm just going to really echo what Councillor McEwen and a few others have said. As somebody that's still working as full-time as possible, I appreciate the effort that everybody involved in this has put into this, and this will make my life from a very selfish perspective a lot easier. So thank you very much for your time and your effort.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Lane.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody for their work on this timetable, especially officers who have had to listen to deliberation, but also everybody across the chamber. But this has been the same as the corporate plan and the scheme of administration, and there has been a lot of big changes, and I think that everybody, all political parties are fed into it, and I think we've come up with some good results with a lot of help from officers who've had to put up with a lot of changes and moving backwards and forwards as the people responsible are trying to accommodate everybody's views to try and get the best result for everybody. So this is mainly to thank the officers for the work they've done, and democratic services. I'll not name them, they know who they are and they know how much a pain in the neck a lot of us, or they felt we will be, but thank you for all your work you've done on that.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson.
I hope I'm the last person to speak.
You are.
Thank you, Provost. I would just suggest that there's a really good old radio programme that's called Just a Minute. And the rules of Just a Minute are no hesitation, I'm only hesitating when I say that, no hesitation, no repetition, and no deviation. I think all conveners in this council should take that on board, and it should be a rule of this council that we adhere to it.
I look forward to that amendment of the standing orders. So thank you very much to everyone for your contributions today, for the involvement of the cross-party group in achieving this, conveners and officers across the council who were involved in it. It's not a simple process. Members, can we agree the 2023 committee timetable? Thank you very much. Yes, you may. Item 10.1. Can members agree that Councillor Cuthbert replace me on the Community Planning Partnership Board? Item 10.2, can the council agree that Councillor Frampton replace Councillor Rebeck on the Children, Young People and Families Partnership? Thank you. Item 10.3, following revisions of the membership of the Audit and Risk Committee as part of the revised scheme of administration, can the council agree that the committee now comprises the following members: Councillor Illingworth as convener, Councillor Chan as vice convener, and Councillors Liz Barrett, Colin Stewart, Ken Harvey, Ian McPherson and Grant Stewart? Can we agree? Thank you. Congratulations on your reappointment to the Audit Committee. Item 10.4, can we agree that Councillor Cuthbert be added to the Dr Donald Duncan Bequest Fund Committee as the Council's representative, and that is a tongue twister? Can we all agree? Thank you. Shh. Item 11 on the agenda, can we agree to note the briefing notes issued to elected members since the last council meeting on 28th September 2022? Thank you very much, councillors. That concludes today's business. Thank you for your time and for your cross-party working today. Have a lovely break till our next meeting.